Look, there's a cat in this video. Isn't that crazy? Miss Fanny's not normally uh one to be in the videos, but I've been gone for a week. I don't know if you've noticed. I was in Petersburg, Virginia, doing research on Joseph Cotton, so that's exciting, and I will be following up on that later. Here's the cat. Is she coming back? So Miss Fanny has missed me a lot, so she's being a lot sweeter than she normally is. Not that she's not a sweet cat, but she shows her love in other ways usually. But you're not here to see my cat. You're here to see what movie I saw today, which was The Magnificent Seven, the 2006 version. Now, I've seen the original one a few times, but it's been a good long while. So to be honest, going into this, it was almost like going into it fresh, because really all I remembered from the original was that Yul Brynner's awesome, and that Eli Wallach played a Mexican again, even though he's not. It's pretty much all I remembered from that version of the film. So coming into this version, there's a lot of differences. So if you're familiar with the other film, like basically, and obviously Seven Samurai, this is as different from the 60 Magnificent Seven as the 60 Magnificent Seven was from Seven Samurai, in that it's the same general principle, same sort of set of actions, but the names, location, all of that is different. None of the characters have the same name, none of them have the same backgrounds, and it's not even set between the Mexican and American border like that film. This one is set in a mining town, possibly in Northern California, because they're supposed to be 3 days ride from Sacramento. So it'd be like my neck of the woods from where I grew up. Although it was filmed in Louisiana, and let me tell you, the fields in Louisiana and New Mexico where they film these things, New Mexico was for the other part of the film, but the fields in Louisiana do not look like the fields in Northern California. That's all I'm going to say. And the only other complaint I have is that the lead woman's top was ridiculously low, and it really didn't need to be that low. Like, that was there for teenage boys, and not that historically accurate, especially considering the rest of the women in the film were dressed correctly. Oh well. So the seven in this film is really interesting, because there's seven, but there's really more than seven, because you have the seven, right? And it's Denzel Washington, Chris Pratt, Ethan Hawke, Vincent D'Onofrio, Byung-hun Lee, Manuel Garcia-Rulfo, and Martin Sensmeier. But you also have Haley Bennett, who's playing the widow of Matt Bomer's character. So if you thought Matt Bomer was one of the seven, he's not. He's more like the Janet Leigh cameo. If you know what that means, you know that I just did a little slight spoiler. But maybe that's in the trailer, I don't know. The point is, because I watched the trailer like once, I didn't need a trailer to convince me to see this movie. I love Denzel Washington. He's the greatest. So she really gets quite a meaty role, and is really the instigator of getting the seven together, of keeping them together, and she gets a really, really, really badass last scene. So kudos on that. The seven, which I'm sure lots of people felt was done to be politically correct, but if you read what Antoine Fuqua was talking about, he wanted to try to make the West more accurately diverse, and I gotta applaud him for that, because as a fan of Westerns, there's a lot of white people in Westerns that came out of Hollywood in the heyday, and if there is a non-white person, they're usually a villain, and you're usually a white person playing a Mexican or a Native American, and so that's pretty awkward. So in this, you get a nice look at a black cowboy played by Denzel Washington, who's got some history, including fighting in the Civil War. You've got your gambler, which is always good. Well, the main thing I wanted to say before I get back to talking about the seven, because this is important, I've seen a lot of Westerns, and there's a lot of people think that most Westerns are like Cowboys and Indians, or like Shoot Out the OK Corral kind of stuff. But there's so many different facets of Westerns. There's mountain Westerns. There's, what am I trying to say? I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I'm tired. I'm sorry. But there's a bunch of different settings that westerns are set in. They're not all Southwest westerns. They're not all Texas. Some are Colorado in the mountains. Some are in California. Some are in the Mexican border. Like they're all over the place, and there's lots of different tropes that show up depending. And one of the few films that really shows all of these tropes is How the West Was Won, where you get cowboys and gamblers and ranchers and mountain men and things like that. And because of How the West Was Won spans 50 years. Magnificent Seven manages to shove all of that without spanning 50 years. So you have the black cowboy, or he's actually a bounty hunter kind of dude. You have a gambler. You have Ethan Hawke's character he's got the best name. His name is Goodnight Robichaux. He's a sharpshooter veteran of the War of Northern Aggression who's having post-traumatic stress syndrome. He's quite good. His BFF is played by Byung-hun Lee, and he's supposed to be Chinese. He's North Korean or South Korean, playing Chinese. Well, probably came over to work on the railroad or something like that. California, as you should know, was full of people of Chinese descent working on the railroad and working in San Francisco mostly. So he's in there. He gets to sort of channel a little what's his name? Mifune, especially if you've seen Red Sun. That was pretty great. Manuel Garcia-Rulfo plays the Mexican outlaw who, that's a trope as well, but he's a good guy. He's a bad guy, good guy. And then Martin Sensmeier is Native American from Alaska, and he's playing a Comanche named Red Harvest, which I have to think is a callback to Hammett. It must be, even though this film is not really film noir. Palazzo, who wrote it, is such a fan of noir that you gotta know that's what he's doing. So I gotta wrap this up because YouTube only lets me do 10-minute reviews. Also in it is Peter Sarsgaard playing the bad guy, and Peter Sarsgaard as a bad guy is everything you ever wanted. He's great, he's slick, he's sleazy, he's a robber baron. He didn't make his money because his parents left it to him. He made his money by stealing it the good old-fashioned American way. Fucking great commentary right there. Cam Gigadnet, isn't it? Cam Gigadnet, whatever his name is. He's in Twilight and the OC, and that's all I'll ever know him from. But he always pops up as bad guys, and I really, really appreciate that. Also in the film is, and back to the seven, I missed one. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. Vincent D'Onofrio plays the mountain man tracker dude, and so this is the character in the Old West would be like super racist, and he is a little bit until he meets and humanizes a Native American, and it adds for an interesting layer of like meet your enemy and maybe they're not your enemy anymore. But he's also like got that crazy mountain man voice that is so great, and he gives a really good performance. And it reminded me of Jimmy Stewart in How the West Was Won, only like just fantastic. So Vincent D'Onofrio, thumbs up. We share a birthday. There's a lot of comedy in this film. And apparently, one last little thing, apparently the man who plays the preacher in this film is from Atlanta, or lives in Atlanta, but he's British or Irish or something, and he was at the screening that I was at. That's the kind of shit that used to happen to me in Los Angeles, and here it is happening in Atlanta. Crazy, right? Okay, so this film, it's got some comic elements. It has lots of throwbacks to Westerns. It's basically a modern-day shoot-'em-up, which Antoine Fuqua is good at doing, like go watch The Equalizer, set in a Western setting, playing with various Western tropes. I did not read any of the reviews, so I don't know what people didn't like about it, but I can see how there could be complaints because there's so many different things going on, and there's not, they don't just pick one thing and stick with it. But as a fan of cross-genre cinema, I was okay with it. I enjoyed every minute of it. I enjoyed all the performances. I enjoyed the backstories. I enjoyed the way they mixed so many different types of Westerns into one big, giant, modern shoot-'em-up Western. And I fucking enjoyed Denzel Washington in a black cowboy hat, killing people left and right, including while riding a horse. So, if that sounds like a film you want to see, go see this film. This was Antoine Fuqua's The Magnificent Seven. Just came out. I really enjoyed it. Find me on Twitter and we can talk some more about it. Go see this film.